All right. What are we starting today? We're starting our story. We're starting, like when your parents sits you down and goes, well, that's a picture of your great-great-grandfather who was a questionable character, but he married and then. Okay, that's what this is about. This is what begins today. And we begin today with probably one of the most problematic characters of the Bible. I want you to notice we're not going to go through all of Abraham, because I said we can't. But we'll go through a few different key things, and we'll end up in two sections, both of them in the portion of Vayirah, which is not the first portion about Abraham. One of them is going to be about the three guests, and Sarah being told she will become pregnant at the ripe old age of 90. And then, of course, Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac. Two seminal chapters about Abraham. You will know that Abraham is problematic by the amount of midrash there is about Abraham. I told you always, if there's midrash, if there's exegetical writing, if there is hadith, as there is in Islam, that's because there's a problem. No problem, there's no need to comment on, right? We don't need commentary. But on Abraham, we have a lot of commentary. And all the commentary is over the top favorable. Why? Because he needs a lot of explaining. Okay? A lot of explaining Abraham needs, because otherwise, how are we going to understand it? Now, it's beautiful. I love exegesis. Yes, I love midrash. I love Kabbalah. After all, is midrash like the Tuti Midrashim. That's Kabbalah. That's Zohar. Is the greatest midrash of them all, and I adore it. It's my favorite kind of Judaism. However, midrash sometimes does injury to the very intention of the Bible, and I would submit to the very intention of God. I'm not one to say things like that lightly, right? I don't normally say to what God intends. But what is intended here seems to be very clear, and let's see how midrash does damage to that. If you will open, please, to page 45. 45, yes. This is chapter 12, Yod Bet, verse 1. Yeah? And this is the portion of Lech Lecha. Yeah, page 45, chapter 12, verse 1, Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Vayomer Adonai el Abraham. Do you have it? Lech lecha me'artzecha u'moladetcha. And God said to Abraham, go, well, lech lecha. We don't know exactly what lech lecha means, do we? Lech lecha can mean a few different things. Why shouldn't have God just said, lech? Go. Just go, okay? Leave. Or azov and then lech. Leave and then go towards. But God says, lech lecha. Lech lecha is one of those wonderful biblical idiosyncrasies that happen in biblical writing, certainly in old biblical writing, and that's the double affirmative or the double negative, right? Yadoa teda. Know you shall know. Go you shall go. Okay? Double affirmative. It's always important because it's telling you this is important. When there's a double affirmative, this is important. When there's a double negative, this is important. Once mentioning it is not enough, I have to mention it twice. Of course, there's beautiful midrashim about it because the word lecha means to you or towards you. So when God says to Abraham, lech lecha, it could mean, which I would submit biblically it meant go already, but it could also mean go towards yourself. Start a journey towards yourself. And I will show you throughout today how Kabbalistically that's exactly what Kabbalah believes is intended. Go towards yourself. In other words, we are today introduced with a few subject matters. One is irrationality. The second one is devotion, faith. And the third one is inwardness. And another one is particularity. And another one is otherness. So irrationality, faith, particularity, otherness, and inwardness are all introduced today. And this chapter, this portion of our Bible is all about relationship. And we have to see, what does that mean in normal human terms? What does it mean in Kabbalistic terms? What does it mean in Hasidic terms? What does it mean in rationalist Rambam kind of thinking, which I am not prone to indulge, but I will today, because it's interesting. Okay? So God says to Abraham, Lech Lecha. What does Abraham say to God?
Well, doesn't Lech Lecha infer that there's an ambivalence about going, that God is saying that take yours, in other words, there's a you and there's another.
You could say that. It's not implied. I would have to say that Hebraically speaking, biblically speaking, all it means is go. That's what it means. It's go with a big voice. In other words, I don't want you to doubt what I'm telling you now. Go. So when the way that the Torah does it, because it doesn't like giving, first of all, it's very, very sparse on adjectives, and second, it doesn't like to give reasonings. What it does is it will show you, by doubling a word, it will show you the importance of that command. So it implies actually no ambivalence whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it's just simply a declaration. Okay? So there we have it. Now, Lech Lecha. What does Abraham say to God? Nothing. Excellent. Who is God, by the way? No? We don't know who God is, because as far as Abraham is concerned, God, this is the first time God is speaking to Abraham. Correct? There is no prior discussion between Abraham and God. As a matter of fact, if you want to look on your own back to the end of the portion of Noah, you'll see the introduction to Abraham. It's a very boring recounting, simply telling you of who his father and grandfather were and where they lived and then where they went. That's it. There is zero information about Abraham. Nothing. Yes?
Where does the story with the idols come from, and why? Why do you think
so? Let's get to that.
I think they skipped something.
That's what I'm talking to you about Midrash. When Midrash suddenly starts stepping on the intention of the Bible itself, and I would say having a disagreement with God. And we know that the rabbis in the rabbinical period do rule sometimes, and I disagree with them. In Tanur Shel Achnai and Achnai's oven, that it's great that God decreed something. We're here, we're the ones who decree, not God. I disagree with that, but that's fundamentally Jewish. We need to understand that rabbinic Judaism believes that you take precedence. This is about us. This is about people. Now, it's great. It's that God decrees or whatever, fine, but we here have to work it out. All right? So this is one of the examples of why is there a midrash about what Abraham was like as a child? Because there is no information about Abraham as a child. Okay? So the midrash wants to understand why, of all people in the world, should Abraham be the one that God talks to? What's the story with Abraham? Well, the story is nothing. There is no reason, actually, that God speaks to Abraham. There is no description of Abraham's looks. There's no description of Abraham's strength. There's no description of Abraham's intellect. There's no description of Abraham's soul. There's zero information. You. That's it. Why? Because I said so. And that is fundamental to understanding Bible and to understanding Judaism. Because I said so. Hey, Mozart, you're going to be the most talented musician ever born. Why me? Because, well, you couldn't pick a nicer person. Seriously? Mozart? I mean, Bach would have been better, for sure. I think Bach was probably in many ways greater, but that's a different issue, okay? But there are a few other nicer, more upstanding citizens to make that ridiculously talented. Why Mozart? Because Mozart. Because you. That's why. That's why I'm God and you're not. And let's understand the relationship between me and you. You're not me. You're not me. You don't get me. You don't understand me. You never will understand me. And if you try to spend time understanding me, have a good time. I'll see you towards the end of your life as you're frustrated and ripping your hair off because you still don't get it. So, the Torah very distinctly does not want to give you a reason why Abraham. And I will show you afterwards that according to Abraham's behavior, you should really wonder why Abraham. Okay? So God says this stuff to Abraham, but what does Abraham do? Abraham immediately does what God tells him. So we now know something immediately about Abraham. Apparently, not a man of words. He's apparently not interested in understanding why. He just knows that God, whom he apparently just met, told him to go. And hey, in other words, he's the anti-Jonah. He's exactly the opposite of Jonah. Jonah, who is gifted. Jonah is gifted. Jonah is a great poet. Abraham never utters 3 words worthy of what Jonah had to say after he, is in the belly of the fish. Because Jonah's soliloquy is to die for. Abraham's words, they're okay. They're nothing amazing. They're fine. But Jonah does everything he can to avoid doing what God wants of him. And Abraham does everything he can to do what God tells him. They are opposite characters. Yes?
But you're talking about Abraham, and the text is giving us Avram without the hey syllable.
Yeah. Yeah. So Avram without the hey syllable. So
Joel Hoffman would tell us that.
But well, first of all, the most important rule, right, Julie, and you know that, is never jump ahead. You already know what happens later. We don't know anything. Right now, there's a guy called Avram, and God speaks to him for no apparent reason. I would submit that, please remember this. What the Bible is not is a psychological book. What the Bible is not is an anthropological book or a forensic book. It doesn't care less about the psychology of the characters it is speaking to. And by the way, Abraham seems to have no psychology, just like Moses. In other words, the 2 people closest to God, the Bible chooses to tell you nothing about their personality. And I would tell you that it's not accidental. Because very soon, next time that we do this class, will be about Jacob. I know so much about Jacob. Really, I do. Jacob is human. He's very human. Yeah, there are a lot of human. David, oh my God, is he human. But Moses and Abraham is responsible for the fact that we even exist. And Moses is responsible for the fact that people just don't run in the streets and murder each other like that. That's how important Moses is. And about those 2 people, we don't know anything psychological. And it's not an accident. The Bible is trying to tell us something, and that goes as a cautionary mark to a lot of people who will want to interpret religious figures through psychological lenses, is that these figures did not live post-Freud. And using Freudian methodology to explain that Nachman or Moses is to me about as useful as me using poetry to explain oil drilling. Okay? They don't have much to do with each other. They really don't. And I mean that sincerely. A, I mean that biblically, because it's not biblical. And B, I mean that personally. In other words, I believe that certain encounters with God transcend psychological explanations and have very different results and effects on people. That just trying to explain their childhood or their relationship to their mothers ain't going to cut it. It's not what's going to be right. Yes?
So you're saying it's not important that this story was made up about him?
I didn't say it was made up. I didn't say it was made up. I'm just
It's not
presenting.
there.
I'm saying that story
Right,
about.
big idols.
No, it's
And
important.
him and
It's
his
important
mother.
for me to not
Right.
follow that story,
Right.
because I think the point that is being made is something very simple. This is not about an ethnic gift or a genetic gift of a people. Very important to remember. Abraham is not gifted that way. He is not special that way. And that's kind of the point of it. Moses is preordained to be who he is. And so we don't know anything about his psychology because that's not the point. The point is that Moses is preordained. Okay? Similarly, if you look at the character of Jesus, I don't know anything about Jesus as a child. And there's a good reason I don't know anything about Jesus as a child, because it's irrelevant. It's simply irrelevant. That's not the point the gospel is trying to make. What was Jesus like in 5th grade is not the point of the story. Yeah? And this is not the point. So, gifted or not gifted? I don't know. Intelligent, not intelligent? Maybe. What was special about him? Nothing in particular. And that's the point. In other words, you become a peculiar and special people because God chooses you. God does not choose you because you are a peculiar and special people. This is huge. This is huge. That takes away any kind of ethnic pride or genetic pride in, oh, you know what family I come from? Who cares? It's irrelevant. You can come from the dirt is the point. I'll pick you up from anywhere. And if I anoint you, if I touch you, you're it. You're the gifted one. That's it. And don't ask why, because here's another thing the Bible really doesn't care, is why. That's not. Lo bazeh askinan. The Torah is not dealing with why. The Torah is dealing with what happened. Here's what happened. Why? That's for Midrash to ask. That's for Kabbalah to ask. That's for much later to look into as to why. God, by the way, does not like giving reasons. I don't know if you noticed, but if you read the Bible, God really does not like being asked why. That's all. I told you, do. And Abraham does. Okay? So I wanted to establish that up front.